In this video, we're going to talk about automation in Python. So there are many ways that we can do automation in Python, but for today, I want to see how we can automate tasks with the operating system. So we're going to learn how to use two main modules in Python, and these are the ones I'm going to use to basically do everything. So let's just get started quickly. The two modules that we're going to talk about is the OS module and the shuttle module. So let me just import first. This is how you import the module. So just import OS, and you also import shuttle. So just like that. So this is what these two modules do. The OS module is for interacting with the file system in your machine, and the shuttle module is for advanced file operations. So operations like copying and moving files. So naturally, we usually do these operations manually. With your just click around to copy, paste, and all that. But now you can do this in our code using this shuttle module. Now, let's just start with a simple way to do this. How about, let's say you want to explore your file system. So you just want, again, the normal way that you'd usually just go through how your files are organized in your machine. And I want us to try that here. So what I'll do is, first, I want us to check the current directory where we are. So I'll just say, okay, let me use an F string. So I just need an F here. Then we'll just say current, let's say current working directory. Then the current working directory is going to be, we use OS module, so we'll just say os dot get cwd. So if you have already done or you have some experience with using this command line commands, this cwd stands for current working directory. So when you say os dot get cwd, is saying os dot get current working directory. So we want to know which directory are we at right now with what you're doing. And I want us to just run the code quickly. So just say Python 3. I call this file boring stuff.py. Then when you hit enter, you see it tells us that our current working directory is home. Then you can see this is the automation. You can see again from my terminal here, it's showing us that we're in the automation directory. Again, in your machine as well, you'll notice that your terminal might be displaying a bit differently, but you'll see this entire path showing there, depending on, again, which directory you're working from. But yeah, so this is how you check for the current working directory that you're using. And you can also just do it manually on the terminal. You can just say cwd and hit enter. So no, not cwd, we'll say pwd. I'm just confused. Then like that. So pwd means print working directory. So when you do that, you can see again, this shows us this is the working directory. And when you run our code, you can also see that it's still the same directory that we're talking about. Now, let's try and list the folders that we have in this directory, folders and files, everything. And I'm going to just have a print statement for just formatting. Then just say something like listing uh, files and folders. Okay, this should be lowercase I. So listing files and folders. And how we do that is we're going to iterate through the current directory that we are at. So we'll just say for item in, then to do that, just say os dot list dir. So list dir, as you can we've already concluded there, stands for list directory. So in the current directory, we want to see each of the items that is in that directory. Then you can just print the item. You can just try to format it a little, but I'll just say item. Okay, I think formatting it would be better. Let me just have an F string here. Then we'll just say something like that, and then we'll say item like this. Now, before we run our code, how you'd the command line command that you'd use to check or list the items that are in your directory is the ls command. So if you type in ls and hit enter, you'll see that it's going to list the files that you have. In my case, I only have this file that is called boringstuff.py. Right. So, but let's try to just run our code to see what we get. So when you run our code, this is what it does. It tells us that our working directory is this one, automation. Then listing the files and folders that are there. We have .trop project, and there's the boring stuff.py. Again, this is a dot file, so you can see it's already here. So it's a folder that you can see there. Anyway, so this is what you have as how you can be able to list the current files and folders in your directory. Now that we have this, again, I'll actually just reiterate on this. We use the os.getcwd to print the current working directory, and the lostdir, we use this one to list everything that is inside of this current working directory. So this is again how you can just you can try and manage your files automatically by just doing this. Now that we've been able to just do some read operations on this, the next step for us is to try and create some files and folders. So I'm actually going to let me just use some comments here to try and okay, yeah, I'll just use some comments, and I'll say this one is let's say explore file system. Then I'll also have this one here. So now what you want to do is you want to create folders and files. So create folders and files. Now, in creating folders and files, it's pretty simple how we can do this. So first, we need to come up with a folder name. I want us to create a folder. So I'm going to just, again, you can just do it manually, honestly, but I'm going to create it, store it in a variable name first. So let's say we create a folder, and I'm going to call this folder backup underscore folder. I'll call this again. Remember when we listed our folders and files here, we didn't have a folder called this backup folder. So let's just keep an eye on that. So what we'll do is, the first thing we need to do is we need to check whether such a folder exists in our file system first. So how we do that is we check if it exists. And then if it exists, we tell the user that the file already exists. If it doesn't exist, then we can create it. This is why normally if you try to create a file or a folder in a directory where such a file or folder exists, your system will automatically, or your operating system will automatically tell you that this file or this folder already exists. So same thing here. So we'll just say if not, then just say os.path.exist. So exist os.path.exist, then we just pass in the folder name. So this is going to do what I just mentioned. It's going to check whether this folder name exists. If it doesn't exist, then we can go ahead to create the folder. So the command for creating a folder is called mkdir, which stands for make directory. So make directory, and then you can pass in the directory name. Again, directory folder is the same thing in case it's confusing. So in this case, now this line is going to create this folder. Then once you've created it, again, you can just print a statement to a user. This is important for just for formatting purposes. And then we tell the user that, let's say we created a folder, and then you can tell them the folder name. In this case, we pass in folder underscore name. Then, because we're using if not, but what if it exists, then that means we have an else. In this case, in the else statement is where we're going to print a statement to a user, and we're going to tell this user that the folder already exists. Also tell them here, folder already exists, like this. So now that we're able to do this, let's try to run our code to see what this does. And I'll just expand the terminal a little bit. Let's run this. So when you run it, you see it tells us that it created a folder called backup folder. Now, if you look at on our panel here on the left side of the screen, you'll see that a backup folder has been created, and this folder did not exist before. Right. So again, we can just try to list the files to see that again. You can simply just copy this from here, and then we'll just paste it somewhere down here. Then if we run our code now, you'll see that it tells us here, okay, folder already exists because I'm running the code for the second time. So it's checking and realizing the folder exists. But when you try to list the files and folders, you can see that the backup folder is listed as part of them. So that is important. I'll just get rid of this for now. Now that we've been able to create a folder, you can also be able to create a file and write into a file and all those other all those other things. But to create a file, it's also a bit it's the same actually. If you want to create a file and to create a file. So okay, let me just copy this here. I don't want to just edit it. Let me just use this same code, and I'll just say here file. uh okay, let me just do this. Then let's what am I doing here? Oh, okay, let me just do this. What I was doing with the, I'll call it file, file underscore name. Then here I'll change, instead of folder name we're going to have file. Okay, I believe we're already done here. Then created, I'll just get rid of that, and then here we'll just say backup file. Let's say we give this file a name like backup file.txt, like that. So it's going to check if this file exists, but not to create a file. We don't use mkdir, we use touch. Touch is the command that we use for it. So if you are the way you'd use this command called touch in your local machine is you just say touch followed by the name of the file. In this case, it's a text.txt. Then you do that, you'll see that a text.txt file has been created here. But now you can't do this in this case, in this case here, because it's not an attribute of the OS module. In this case, what you're going to do is you have to create the file manually with the file handling techniques that we learned earlier on. So I'm just going to get rid of this new code that I just created. So how you'd create and write into a file, very simple. You just use the with open that we've already seen before. Then you can have a file, for example, like it's a sample file. Let's call it sample underscore file.txt. Then this file, we're going to open it in write mode because again, we're creating the file. So then we'll open as file. Once you've opened this, then you can write something into the file. So you can just say here file.write, and you can write some message into this. You can say hello, it's a here hello, it's a hello Python, like that. So we can tell you the statement like, okay, again I'm honestly just typing this, yeah. So we say something like automate this, then we're going, because we're going to add some other stuff below. Now I'll comment out this because it's going to try and create a new file, or a new folder, which it won't, because we already have the safeguards in place. So now if I run this code, you see here that it tells us that folder already exists, yes, but it also created this file. So you can see a sample.txt file has been created. That's why if we should be able to have, okay, here. So okay, we haven't listed it because this was right before, but the file exists. If you run the code again, you'll see that it tells us that there's a sample.txt file that is here. So this is how you create a file rather. Then to write into a file is just the same thing that we've already seen before. But one thing I should mention, as you can see, our text is already inside the file, so that's good. When you use the with open, I mentioned this when you are working with files, but when you use the with open pattern like this, it helps avoid memory leaks in your whenever you're carrying out your operation. So this is why you should go for this instead of the one method that we saw where you use the open method and then you store the result into another file, not file but variable name. Once you've done this, you've created the file, then you can go ahead to do some of the other operations. For now, I'm going to just comment this out because we've already created the file, so we don't need to. You can also just get some checks like if statements to handle that logic. But for now, let's just move on. So we can do the basic operations that you do. You usually create a file, you copy the file, you move the file around, you can rename the file if you wanted to. And I would like us to start with moving a file. So when we started, we imported this shuttle module, and this is the function of this shuttle module. So it helps us do those sorts of manipulations. So if I come here and say shuttle.move, shuttle.move, and I can pass in the file that I want to move. In this case, we have sample_file.txt, and then I mention where I want to move this file to. So I'll use a simple f string. Then I'll say I want to move this file to. I give here the folder name. Then I'll say the folder name. This is the current folder. Note that we have folder name that we created earlier on. Where is it? It's here. So it's in the current folder. And then in the sample, we call it sample, not sample. Uh, oh yeah. So this is the file that we want to move. So we specify that the file is in this specific folder. So we'll say sample_file dot txt. Okay, I do hope this makes sense. I hope I haven't lost anyone here. So once you do this, I'll just add a comment here just to help you further. So here we want to move the file that we have to the backup folder. Backup underscore, okay, let me just say folder. No, I'm using the variable name. So our backup, we have the current folder name. This is where the file exists. Now what we want to do is we want to try and copy the file now, copy the file back to basically the backup where we want it to be. So let's do this first. Like us to run our code. Okay, so we've run our code, right? If you go to the backup folder here, you'll notice that the sample.txt file has been moved here to this folder. I hope this makes sense. So backup folder sample.txt is already there, and it's not available outside here in the normal folders where it was before, rather among these other folders and files that are here. So I hope this makes sense. We can still do the same for the text.txt file if you wanted to. So for example, instead of sample file, I can just say text. Then here I'll say text. And as I run my code, I want you to just keep your eye here on the left panel. So if I run this, you'll see that the text.txt file moves. And if you try to open the backup folder, you'll see that the text.txt file is right there. So that is what this does. It moves the files. I'll have the sample file back like that. Then the other operation that you can do is that you can copy the file back. So you can copy the file back to where it was before. And to do that, again, we use shuttle. So you can just say shuttle.copy. Then you will still give it two parameters. So first you need to specify, of course, where you're getting it from. So we'll just say folder underscore name, the one that we created earlier. This should be curly braces here. So we specify folder underscore name / in this case sample.txt sample_file.txt. Once we do this, and then we can specify the file here as the second argument. And let me just do this quickly. Sample_file. Let's call it, yeah, let's give it, for example, from file underscore copy. Just call it this here, copy.txt. So you can see the difference. So once you do this, you'll notice the difference here. The difference here is that in the when we are moving them, the name of the file came first as the argument, then where we're moving to came second. But when we interchange at this point, rather when you want to copy the file back, we just interchange. I hope that explanation makes sense, but you can see it for yourself. Now let's run our code. When you run our code, okay, we've run into an error here. It's saying sample file .txt. What is going on here? Open RB with open file not found. No such file as sample_file.txt. Wait, what did I call the file? Sample_file.txt. This is what I called it. Okay, this is weird. Okay, let's just try to look at this again. Sample_file. Oh, okay, I see. The reason we're getting this error here I think it's because of not from here. I think from before here. Yeah, we're trying to move. So I need to comment out line 24. This is one that is bringing the error because it's trying to move like we did before. So I'll just comment it out and run our code again. Should be able to work fine now. So we run this. Okay, awesome. You can see it has worked. So we have the sample file. It has been copied outside here. Now we have a copy called sample underscore file underscore copy.txt. So that is the operation right there. Then apart from copying the files, we can also rename files if you wanted to. So we're going to have rename file. So how you rename file, uh, let's say rename, how you rename a file, again pretty same, but in this case we use the os module. So you can just say os.rename. Remember we imported all these modules earlier on. So os.rename, then you give it two arguments. The first argument is the file name that you want to rename. In this case, let's try to rename sample file copy, like that. So we want to rename this file to, let's say something like copied underscore file dot txt, like that. So I'm going to just comment this out so you don't get the same error we got earlier on. We run this. I want you to keep your eyes on the left panel here to see how it changes that name. So you hit enter, you see the file has already changed to copied underscore file dot txt. So basically this is the automation that we've been talking about. You can just automate this task like this. You can manage everything in your machine like this. So from now, I'm sure you're already getting ideas of how you can be able to build a script that, can automate a number of operations on your machine. So again, shuttle.copy, the one that we've seen here, we use this to make a copy of the file that we want to. Then shuttle.move, we use it to move a file to a folder. And os.rename, we use this to rename a file. So again, this is the kind of thing that you can schedule, maybe to run some. If you have, let's say, a task scheduler, you can use this to set it up. If you have some cron jobs that you want to run as well, you can do this with similar to what you've done here. The only operation that we haven't done so far is deleting. So we've seen how you can read and basically explore your file system. We've seen how you can manipulate it, in terms of reading, moving, copying, moving, renaming. The remaining one is how to delete. So the way you can delete, like that. So the way you can delete, still the same, kind of similar as well. So just say os.remove. So there's a remove method that comes with the os module. os.remove, then you can specify the file that you want to remove. In this case, let's say I want to remove the copied file.txt. So I do os.remove, then this is going to remove the file. Let's run our code here. I'd like you to just again keep your eye on this part to see whether the file disappears. Run our code. You see it says file not found. Okay. I need to, because we've already renamed, so I just need to comment this out. Again, same problems from before. We run this again now. You see here, the file has already disappeared. So just like that. Again, note that I'm getting these outputs because of the previous code that we wrote in the beginning. So yeah. Then the other thing that we can do, apart from deleting a file, we can also delete our folder. So I'll just write here delete file just to differentiate between all this. Then you can also delete a folder. So how you delete a folder, still the same thing, but now you don't use the os module here, you use shuttle. So you just say shuttle.rm, then you just say rm tree. Then in this case you pass in the folder name. In this case I want us to delete the backup folder, so I'll just pass in folder name. Remember the backup folder is the one that we created earlier on here in line 13. So you should be able to delete the backup folder, and I want you to just keep your eye on that to see how that happens. We run our code and error. Okay, of course I need to just comment this out again. So we do that, and then let's run this code again. Then you see that disappears. Now we only have the boring stuff underscore stuff.py file that we're working with. So this is ideally it. These commands that we've just seen, they permanently delete files and folders. So you need to be really wise when it comes to how you use this remove and rm-tree commands, because they remove folders and files entirely. So especially the rm-tree one, you need to be really careful with it, because if you use it in the wrong folder, you'll end up getting rid of a lot of things from your machine, and you don't want to do that. So they're really powerful. You need to be careful with how you use them. Yeah. So this is how you can be able to manipulate and uh, do automations in your file systems, and you can try and look for projects on how you can do this. But what I want us to do is I want us to try and build a simple, let's build a simple, let's say, a backup tool, like a simple tool that automatically backs up files and folders if you want in your machine. So to do this, I'm going to create a file here in this directory. Like I told you, you can use the touch command to create a file. So I'll say touch and then the name of the file. So I'm going to call this file, let's say autobackup.py. Okay, so we're going to work inside of this file. So we want to create, again, I'll repeat on this. I want us to try and just build a simple auto backup tool. So a simple script that, for example, copies, let's say, .txt files from one folder and then backs them up into another folder. I hope that makes sense. So first thing that we did earlier on, you need to import the two main modules that you need. Import OS module and also import the shuttle, like that. Once we've imported these two modules, now we need to specify a few things here. We need to specify the directory where we're getting this data from and the directory where we are backing up this data. It's really important that we do that. So let's say, yeah, we're going to just say source directory, and I don't know which directory I'm going to use here. I do have this directory that is called code, so you can try to use this one, but you need to be very careful because this is where all the code is. Okay, I have it backed up on GitHub, so we're fine. But then you are going to have a backup directory. So backup underscore dir, and let's call it code underscore backup, like that. So in this case, and just to the first step we need to do is we need to create the backup folder if it does not exist, right? And this is a point where you try, maybe pause the video and try to recall what we did, how we were checking that. Yeah. So anyway, let's proceed here. So you can go ahead and do the check. So we'll say if not, then we just say os.path.exists. Let's say exists, like that. Then in this case it's the backup folder, so backup directory, that is. Then if this backup directory does not exist, then we're going to create it. So we'll say os.mkdir. We know mkdir should be an m here. Mkdir, that's the command that we use. And then we want to create the backup directory. Once we do this, let's add a simple else, just to tell a user that the folder maybe already exists. So folder already exists. Now in this case, one thing that you've probably thought of is, in case a user keeps on trying folders and files that already exist, how do you keep them in a continuous loop until they create a specific folder? You can use a while loop. We've seen how you can do that, so you can try and figure it out. Anyway, so the next thing I want us to do here is write a simple script for backing up. So just say backup all .txt files, which I'm not sure that we have .txt files, but let's see. Then how we can do this now? Simple. We already have the folder. All we need to do is we need to iterate through that folder, then look for a folder that ends with the same extension that we want. Then we just back up that folder. I think it sounds easy enough. So we've seen, again, you can pause at this point to try out to iterate through the folder. But to proceed, we'll just say here for, let's say, for file in os, so os.list dir. So this is the method that we've been using. Then you pass in the source folder because this is the source underscore dir. This is the one that we're looking for. So for a file in this case, we check for the extension. So we say if file dot, it's a ends with, if a file ends with, we specify the file name. In this case, let's just use .txt. then I'll check later if you already have it. So if there's a file that ends with the .txt file, we want to back up this file in the folder. So in this case, what you do is we need to create a full path first. So I'm going to get a file called full path. Then all you need to do is just get the path with os.path.join, and here we're going to pass in the source directory. So let's say source underscore dir, and we also need to pass in the file. Remember, we're looking for all these files that exist, and the files have a .txt file. So you need to create a full path for that specific file. Once you've created the full path, then we can copy it. So all you need to do is, again, you saw how we copied. We used shuttle. So we'll just say shuttle dot copy shuttle.copy, and we pass in the full path as the first yeah, it's here, the full path as the first argument. Then we also pass in the backup directory because this is where we want to have it. So we pass them like that, full pathing like that. And you can just finally print a simple statement that tells the user that the files have been backed up. So I'll just say uh, it says something like backed up, and they specify the specific file that has been backed up like that. So it's going to do this across all the other iterations. Just to repeat on what we've done in this case, we've created a folder. In this case, I called my folder code. Then you have another one called code backup. Then all you need to do is check if the folder exists. If it does not, in this case, the backup folder, we create it. And after doing that, we can go ahead and back up the files that we want to back up. So in this case, let me just use .py, because I don't think I have a .txt file there. So we use files that end with the .py. We're going to try and copy these files. Okay. Now let's try to run our code quickly. So we're going to okay. These are different files. So we call it auto. When we run this code, we get a file not found. The file called code is not found. The reason for this is because we already have not we already have, but rather we're working in a different directory. So in our directory, there's no directory that is called code. So I can what I can do here, I'm going to just do this manually so we can see whether the backup works. So I'll create a folder and I'll call this folder code in here. Then inside the code folder, I'll just cd to the code folder. That's how you move into another folder from your terminal. Then inside of this folder, I'm going to create multiple files. So let's say example.py, call another and call it maybe test.py, and let's say backup.py. So we have those three files. We try to list them. You see we have the files there. Okay, let's run our code again. I just need to go back to the folder. Then once we run our code, yeah, let me just run this manually. So we'll just say python 3 auto backup.py. Once I run it, you see it tells us here, it says folder already exists, backed up, but it has backed up everything literally. So okay, it says folder exists because it created the folder the first time, I guess, once I created it. But anyway, so it has created the code backup folder. So if I go to code backup, you'll see that all the three files are there. If I go to the original code folder, you see that the files are already there as well. So that is basically it. Again, this is a test. You can run this file in a folder that already contains some information that you want. Then you can try it out. In case you face a challenge, just let me know in the comments. I'll help you unblock it. And yeah, this is again a simple script that does these kinds of automations. You can try to figure out many of the other projects that you can create. But so far we've seen how you can navigate directories, how you can create folders and files, how you can copy, move, and delete files. We've also seen this simple project on how you can do some automation on file management. So yeah, so now you are a step closer to becoming an automation wizard. Yeah, if there's a thing like that. Okay, so thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe and share this with people who you think will find it helpful. Cheers.